And if they incline to peace, then incline to it also, and rely upon Allah.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are...
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and privilege on behalf of my colleagues and myself of the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee to warmly welcome this diverse and distinguished audience of professionals, parliamentarians, media persons, intellectuals, scholars, diplomats, and above all, representatives of Kashmir. I would like to recognize Begum Shamim Shaul, the wife of Professor Nazir Shaul Sahab, jo khud tashrif लाई हैं. I would also like to recognize Sayyid Faiz Naqshbandi Sahab, representing the All Parties Hurriyat Conference, and also Sheikh Tajammul Islam Sahab and Hamid Lon Sahab from occupied Kashmir, Valley se aaye hain, and other representatives. Today is the 22nd day after the illegal occupation, annexation of occupied Kashmir by Modi's India. Some facts and realities are before you. First, that the popular, spontaneous, widespread, and indigenous uprising of the Kashmiri people continues unabated despite brutal repression. And despite the fact that Kashmir has now been transformed into the world's biggest and the most brutal prison. Secondly, Kashmir has been internationalized. Even today, as we meet in Biarritz, in France, at the G7 summit, Modi is meeting President Trump, and President Trump has said that he would like to ask Modi what he would like to be doing to help in the alleviation of human rights issues in Kashmir, he mentioned, and also what solutions he proposes. So the internationalization of the issue is very much there. And we are also grateful for some countries of the international community which have extended their support to Pakistan. And also, we would like to salute those brave Indians inside India, political parties, intellectuals, scholars, journalists, civil society activists. They have exposed the true nature of this occupation. And I would like to quote from two articles that have appeared, not from Pakistanis, but from outside Pakistan, which show the reality. One, probably the best article I've seen since August 5, was the article of Arundhati Roy, August 15 in the New York Times. She has mentioned that Modi's action has, and I quote, a whiff of colonialism in the air. She has said, and I quote, today in India, RSS is the state. And she has also mentioned, and this is very important, that the architecture of Indian fascism is being set in place. The architecture of Indian fascism is being set in place. This is Arundhati Roy. Then there was an article by the former American ambassador to Pakistan, William Milam. And William Milam has written, and this article came in the Friday Times last week. He has said, Modi's annexation of Kashmir is in no way different than Hitler's annexation of Czechoslovakia, which was in 1938, and Mussolini's annexation of Ethiopia and Libya before the World War II. So this is what is being written internationally. Modi's action has united all the Kashmiri people, from Ali Gilani Sahib to Mahbooba Mufti Sahiba to Dr. Farooq Abdullah Sahib. And there is also a very strong sense in Pakistan of national unity and a unified response across the board, from the political forces, the parliament, the armed forces, to the government. And you can see that on the whole spectrum of Pakistan's political system is gathered here on the podium. So today's policy seminar was meant to prepare some policy guidelines for the government. For Pakistan, because this issue is above any party, any government, but we feel as a state, it's going to be a long haul and we have to take certain initiatives. The format of today's seminar will be, we have presentations. We have two specialist presentations, one by a very distinguished member of the Pakistani diaspora based in London, Dr. Ijaz Hussain, who will speak on RSS and its roots in the fascist ideology of Nazism with facts and figures. Then we will have a presentation also from Dr. Shirin Mazari, and I've asked her that she should not intrude into the affairs of the Foreign Office because they might feel threatened. So she will focus only on India's blackmail, nuclear blackmail, and what are the, because she's an expert on the nuclear issue also, on the nuclear dimension of the whole crisis, because the nuclear sword is being dangled now. Rajnath Singh mentioned it on 16th of August, that we should finish the no force use doctrine. Then on 20th of April, Modi mentioned that nuclear weapons are not for use in Diwali alone. They're not firecrackers. So this has been talked about. So what are the implications of that? We are also having the Foreign Minister of Pakistan. He was supposed to come now, but he said he had been called away by the Prime Minister because the Prime Minister is to address the nation today, I believe, on Kashmir. Yes. So, but he will be joining us shortly. He will make his speech and then he has to go back because he said his input and consultations are required. And then we have also Salim Safi Saab is here, Tariq Fatmi Saab is here, General Yasin Malik Saab, Kashmiri representatives also. We'll ask them for short presentations. And then, of course, our own Foreign Affairs Committee. And among them, I would especially like to mention Senator Rahman Malik Saab. Because Rahman Malik Saab has written a book on Modi. You are a Modi specialist, actually. And I think I would ask the Pakistani government and the Pakistani establishment to benefit from your services and utilize that in this regard. Maybe your party will not, but I think the state of Pakistan should benefit from that. I'm Marine Nale. Assalamu alaikum. Yes. So I think that will be, my only request would be that the presentations from the main people will be focused. It should be specific, factual, tuck. And those who make comments, please don't repeat what has been said. And it should also be, we don't want to hear the history of what happened. Most people know that. Now, in this situation, what is to be done? Karna kya hai? Kaise karna hai? Tajaweez दें. Okay, कैसे आगे forward looking approach हो? और इसमें हमारी Foreign Office के नुमाइंदे भी मौजूद हैं. And I would also say that I recognize the number of thinking generals here also. There are democratic generals also and thinking generals. Talib Masood and Asif Yasin Malik Saab. So जो comments होंगे, it should be short and please don't repeat what has been said. Because we want it to be a very substantive and solid discussion. So without further ado, I will start with Dr. Ijaz Hussain Saab. आप लंदन से तशरीफ लाए हैं, आपने बड़ी मेहनत की है, आपका माशाल्लाह बड़ा background भी है, और I like the Foreign Office को भी इनसे benefit लें, क्योंकि ये he's also a specialist on the RSS and that kind. Dr. Saab, over to you, please. You come here and make the speech. Thank you.
Got my flight delayed by 6 hours at Heathrow and hardly had any sleep and just coming straight to the seminar. And I'll try to, I've been allocated about 20 minutes, is that so? I think 15. Okay, let's 15 minutes. Okay. Now, interestingly, around the same time, exactly the same times, a parallel seminar is being organized at Mumbai. I'd like to start with the reverse order, that how RSS was introduced around the same time. Rashtriya Savayam Sevak Sangh was founded around the same time, same year, as the SS, German SS, Schutzstaffel was founded. Schutzstaffel, we had Himmler, very parallel personalities. We had Schreck, we had Der Levenger, And people like the history, Bal Thackeray in 1966. And then we have, so we compare them with the German, with the Nazis, with the SS people, with the brown shirts of that time, are always there, whether they are in Evra, in
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sayyid Mushahid Hussain Sahab, Chairman Foreign Relations Committee, members of the Foreign Relations Committee, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to begin by thanking you for organizing this policy seminar. I'm sure the deliberations that will take place will be very useful in helping us chart the way forward. I would like to acknowledge the support I have received from you and the Foreign Relations Committee of the Senate in furthering the cause of Kashmir. Many of us on the stage here, I recall clearly, on the 5th of February earlier this year, but at the House of Commons, articulating the point that you will be talking about. So thank you for your support. And it is very important, when we talk of messaging, it is very important that we speak with one voice. That is today Pakistan's strength. You saw day before, Rahul Gandhi, along with 11 leaders of 9 political parties of the opposition, locked up and deported from Srinagar. You've seen 7 petitions filed in the Indian Supreme Court, civil society, retired generals, members of the Indian Civil Service, members of civil society, disagreeing with the action of 5th of August. And fortunately, in Pakistan today, despite political differences on Kashmir, we are speaking with one voice, and that is what gives you strength, and thank you for doing that. 22 days of day and night curfew, 528 hours, agonizing hours, 12 million innocent people brutally cut off from the world through the imposition of the modern Iron Curtain and draconian curfew, with Indian forces massacring people. Thousands, including children, imprisoned without any charge sheet or process. Bereaved mothers of young children, including 4 to 6 years old, inhumanely snatched away from their homes in the cover of darkness for no fathomable crime except being Kashmiri. Empty streets, political leaders imprisoned, freedom of press, including foreign media, held hostage to guns and more occupation forces than civilians, with a soldier posted virtually outside every doorstep. Funerals attacked and the slain buried under police watch in the dead of the night to avoid protests. Ladies and gentlemen, this brutal picture is not from Hitler's Nazi Germany, but from the self-proclaimed largest democracy of the world, the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, where the ruthless Indian occupation and siege of the Indian occupied Kashmir continues on the 22nd day without any respite, despite international condemnation and censure. On the 5th of August, India further consolidated its illegal occupation of IOK by dispensing with the special status of IOK. This illegal, unilateral, and coercive action by the Modi regime aims to alter the internationally accepted disputed status of Jammu and Kashmir and to bring about demographic changes in IOK in order to preempt the outcome of a future UN plebiscite envisaged under the UN Security Council resolutions. Knowing fully well that the Kashmiris would not accept this draconian step, India severed all lines of communication. Internet, mobile phones, even landlines in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, cutting off millions of Kashmiris from the world. Harsh curfew and a ban on public assembly continue. Thousands of innocent Kashmiris remain detained. Children are being kidnapped by the Indian occupation forces to coerce adults into submission. Reputable international media and human rights organizations report on night raids by Indian occupation forces, abduction of young boys, sexual assault of women, torture, and lack of access to even baby food and essential medicines. Ladies and gentlemen, Jammu and Kashmir, as stated by the Qaid himself, is the jugular vein of Pakistan. We will go to every extent to defend the human rights and legal rights of Kashmiris living under brutal Indian occupation. Our response to this illegal Indian step was immediate and in line with our consistent position on Jammu and Kashmir being an internationally recognized dispute pending on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council. Pakistan immediately condemned this unilateral, illegal Indian action. The Prime Minister chaired the meeting of the National Security Committee, which, amongst other things, decided to downgrade relations with India and comprehensively briefed the Parliament on Pakistan's position, detailing the full spectrum of our response. The joint session of the Parliament and its unanimously adopted resolution rejecting the illegal unilateral Indian actions effectively demonstrate Pakistan's unified support to our Kashmiri brethren resisting India's illegal occupation of Jammu and Kashmir. Our intensive diplomatic outreach focused on highlighting the UN Security Council resolutions which reaffirm the right to self-determination to the Kashmiris through a free, fair and impartial plebiscite to be held under the UN auspices. I personally wrote to the UN Secretary General and the President of the UN General Assembly and UN Security Council, OIC Secretary General, as well as the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I also personally participated in the special session of the OIC Contact Group on Jammu and Kashmir, convened on Pakistan's request. I continue to speak to my counterparts all over the world, including the P5 members. The United Nations Security Council, despite frantic Indian opposition held a closed-door meeting on the current situation. The very fact that a meeting of United Nations Security Council was held after 50 years on the Jammu and Kashmir dispute reaffirms the validity of the Security Council resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, we are cognizant of our challenges, including the regrettable reality that Pakistan remains a convenient red herring, as well as an object of fear and hatred for India. The Modi regime unremittingly recycles half-baked truths to delegitimize the indigenous Kashmiri struggle for the right to self-determination in a desperate attempt to equate it with terrorism, to deceive the world and detract attention from its nefarious actions. We continue to sensitize the world about our real concern of Indian diversionary tactics, including the Indian escalation at the line of control and the working boundary, and the possibility of an Indian false flag operation. The Prime Minister has repeatedly flagged this, and I briefed the diplomatic corps most recently this Friday on the same. Ladies and gentlemen, Indian actions are a grave destabilizing threat to the already volatile situation in South Asia and will have serious implications unless curtailed. The jingoistic rhetoric from India and the intensifying oppressive measures in IOK should bring home the stark reality that India resorts to routine escalation at the LOC to divert international attention from the worsening situation in the Indian-occupied Kashmir. The world can no longer afford to remain silent on the Indian state terrorism in IOK. This is a nuclear flashpoint which cannot be ignored any longer. Indian aggression and hegemonic designs are a threat to regional peace and security and need to be taken seriously. Pakistan has no desire to escalate, but the only real solution for Jammu and Kashmir dispute is for India to resolve the dispute in line with the United Nations Security Council resolutions. Since 1989, more than 100,000 Kashmiris have been martyred by the Indian occupation forces. Approximately 12,000 women have been gang raped, and about 108,000 children have been orphaned. It is time to put an end to this misery of Kashmiris living under Indian systematic repression for over 7 decades now. Ladies and gentlemen, I uncovered the shroud and saw my son. This is the agonizing statement of the father of Osab Altaf, martyr of recent Indian clampdown. According to Indian reports themselves, this 17-year-old boy was forcibly drowned by Indian occupation forces. It is time for the world to acknowledge that this is a sentence no parent should have to utter, ever. It is time for the silent Kashmiri voices to be amplified and for Indian state terrorism and the deceptive all is well in Indian occupied Kashmir rhetoric to stop. And that's the impression I have that President Modi Prime Minister Modi gave to President Trump in his meeting in France. That all is well and we can solve our issues bilaterally. And I must acknowledged that President Trump immediately responded, fine, but you have not been able to resolve this bilaterally for decades. Pakistan will go to every forum to ensure that Indian atrocities in IOK are halted and the dispute is resolved in line with the aspiration of the Kashmiris and the UN resolutions. As the Prime Minister said, the UNSC meeting is a reaffirmation of its resolution on Jammu and Kashmir, ensuring addressing the suffering of the Kashmiris and resolution of this dispute is the responsibility of the UN Security Council. As is evident from our reaction, which shall continue, we remain resolute in extending unflinching political, moral, and diplomatic support to the Kashmiris. The time has come to put an end to the suffering of the Kashmiris and break the vicious circle of confrontation in South Asia, and Pakistan will take every step to ensure that. I thank you. Last point, Mr. Chairman. As you know, and I suspect this regime to go to any extent, and I honestly feel that the Indus Water Treaty that was respected during the 1965 war, 1971 war, they might tinker with it. They might not implement it in letter and spirit. And the first manifestation of that is that they were bound to share data with us from the 1st of July to the 30th of October, which is the monsoon flood season. They were bilaterally committed to that. They did not this year sign the bilateral agreement that they have been doing so for years. This is the first time. Yes, sir. And later, मैं आपको अर्ज कर रहा हूं तो जिम्मेदारी से कह रहा हूं. And I think this could be the next challenge that Pakistan will be facing. Being a lower riparian, as a nation, we should be prepared for that. And as I leave this hall, I will be convening and chairing a meeting on the Indus Water Treaty. I have invited all stakeholders to come and sit with me and discuss what options we have, what obligations we have, and what should we do in case the madness goes on. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul Saab. And before I invite the next speaker, I'd like to recognize the chairman of the Parliamentary Committee on Kashmir, Sayyid Fakhar Maan Saab and Begum Abda Hussain Saiba. Welcome back. And also...
Well, tempted as I am to speak on the human rights aspects of the Kashmir issue, I will refrain and I will speak on the nuclear dimensions. Because Foreign Minister said it's a nuclear flashpoint. I think it's not a flashpoint. India has already started operationalizing what could eventually lead to a nuclear war. What I am trying to say is that they have begun an escalation ladder. And I want to begin with that point. But first, let me just give a few statements of the Indians. They lie brazenly. On the 16th of August, the Indian Defense Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, or however you pronounce it, declared that India was thinking of reviewing its no first use policy. That's a load of rubbish. They reviewed it on the 3rd of January 2003, the 4th of January, sorry, 2003, when the government of India published a press release on, and I quote, "The Cabinet Committee on Security reviews rationalization of India's nuclear doctrine And in that press release, the Indian government stated that India would use nuclear weapons against a WMD attack against India or Indian forces anywhere. Now that is a clearly stated first use of nuclear weapons policy. So if India thinks that it can pull the wool over everybody's eyes all the time, perhaps over some people some of the time, but not over all the people all of the time. So this was one major lie amongst the many other lies that the Indians are propagating. And I don't want to go through it, but from 1998 onwards, I have a whole list of whenever they have said, they've continuously stated publicly, we will review our no first use, we will rethink our no first use. It's like a little child, you know, who keeps blackmailing the world. Okay, if you don't do X, Y, Z, we will think of doing this. Well, you've done it. We know India has done it, and that is why nobody takes India's statement seriously about no first use. So let me just begin by clarifying that this is absolutely nonsense, what he said, because there is no first use, there is no first use policy on the part of India at all. In fact, unlike Pakistan, which has kept its position deliberately ambiguous, like NATO, but we've always said it's a weapon of last resort, the Indians have actually now propagated first use through the press release that I cited of 4th January 2003. So where are we then? The threat of war, if we think it may start, we're living in a fool's paradise. The war has started. There are stages in which you build up to a war. And to understand how India has been building up the ante against Pakistan, we need to basically see that even before it committed the illegal act of annexing Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir illegally. And by the way, just want to mention, I think the foreign minister slipped up on that this is actually a war crime. According to the 4th Geneva Convention, Article 49, this is a war crime. You cannot change the status of an occupied territory by any means. You cannot change the demography of an occupied territory. So let's be very clear. What India has done through these acts are war crimes, nothing short of war crimes. But even before it did that, we know the military ante had been upped in stages. India has already threatened and done the following. First, the lowest rung of the escalation ladder at a non-kinetic level. What was India trying to do? To get us blacklisted on the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, and seeking to bankrupt Pakistan economically. Second non-kinetic warfare level that they did was to label us or try and get us labeled as a state practicing terrorism. Let's not forget the irony of who's doing state terrorism in Indian-occupied Kashmir. But you know, Indians have always been brazen about the way that they do terrorism and then blame others and name call other states for doing the same. Then at the kinetic level, war has begun. First, low-intensity conflict, acts of terrorism inside Pakistan. What is that if not the first low rung of an escalation ladder leading towards war? If the world thinks, oh, Pakistan is warning us, but nothing has happened on the ground, no. The world needs to know it has started happening on the ground, and if the world is going to again be in a mode of Munich-style appeasement, then we are not responsible for the consequences, unintended consequences that may follow. So at the kinetic level, first, low-intensity conflict has been going on for a long time. But then what did India do? Non-contact warfare, where you don't send your boots on the ground, but what happened at Balakot? Use of the Indian Air Force, surgical strike, call it by any name. What is that? Is that a peaceful move? No, it's a warlike action. The fact that we responded peacefully and we sent back the occupied pilot, who it is the first time in the history of any country that a pilot who crashes his plane, who gets captured, is then awarded a high military honor. Certainly not for bravery, I don't know, maybe for cowardice, maybe India has different standards of giving awards. Anyhow, then the next stage, let me draw your attention. It was not just Balakot and the one surgical strike. There was then the firing of cluster bombs. Let's be very clear. This is a qualitative shift in the nature of the attacks along the LOC. Cluster bombs are not acceptable under the Inhumane Weapons Convention of 1983, which both Pakistan and India are parties to. Yet, India decided nobody will take notice, the world will not say anything to us. We're a big economic power, we have this facade of democracy, pluralism, etc. So they let loose a whole barrage of cluster bombs, killing civilians on Pakistan, on the AJK side. So I put to you that's another escalation ladder rung that India has climbed since then. So after that, what have they been doing? They have been firing every day across the line of control, specifically targeting civilians. They come on a loudspeaker, they warn the people to leave their homes. Those who don't leave their homes are fired at and shot. And this has been happening on a daily basis. Now, is that a peaceful move, or is it upping the ante on the escalation ladder? So, India has already moved up the escalation ladder, I would put to you, by threatening and carrying out these actions against Pakistan. Now, our concern here is very much so, because what would be the next stage? Would it be some more conventional upping of the ante? Or maybe they would go for some sort of surgical nuclear strike. India is in an unpredictable mode. They have a prime minister who subscribes to the Nazi ideology of ethnic cleansing and genocide. And Hitler tried to develop the nuclear bomb. Mercifully, he was unable to. This man has his finger on the nuclear button. Anything can be expected of him. So, our concern here is very much India's development of the BrahMos missile. Why is India that a concern? Because that's a supersonic missile. And because it's a supersonic missile, therefore, there is very little time lag for Pakistan to react. So either Pakistan has to prepare and put its nuclear forces and other missiles on alert, or it will not be able to respond in a timely fashion if the BrahMos is let loose on Pakistan, like the cluster bombs were let loose across the LOC. There are a lot of military men here. They may disagree, but my little understanding of military matters is we do not have the equivalent of a supersonic missile. We need to develop our capacity for short range, medium range, supersonic, conventional missiles also, not just nuclear delivery weapons. Anyhow, so that is our big threat, the BrahMos. The Indians are very clever actually. Before they became members of the Missile Technology Control Regime, they kept the range of the BrahMos very limited because the MTCR has restrictions for non-members, which is 290 kilometers. Once they became members of the MTCR, they've increased the range of the BrahMos to 1,000 kilometers. So that is going to be an issue of serious concern for Pakistan, and the world should know that if India uses the BrahMos, we do not know what our response will be. We may have to do things that the world may be uncomfortable with, they may not like. But if they're not going to stop the Indian designs of aggression, Pakistan will defend itself whichever way it can. Let's be very clear on that. And we did prove that when we did a counter-attack after Balakot of a place and time of our choosing. And we limited the attack because we just wanted to send a message to the Indians that we have the capacity, but we don't want to start a war. So we are not going to give a response that kills a lot of people. And that's what we did, but the message was there. Anyhow, what are Pakistan's options? Well, I'm telling you, with the capacity that Pakistan and the capability that we have at the moment, we have limited options and we will exercise them. So when our Prime Minister tells the world that I'm warning you, there will be unintended consequences, that warning should be taken seriously. There is the Indian cold start doctrine. That they have threatened but not operationalized, and that would be the next stage. How cold start gets up, because you climb up an escalation ladder. They've already done sending cluster bombs. They have already started attacking the LOC. They have done a surgical strike. Next stage is cold start doctrine. Will they operationalize that? India keeps claiming to the contrary that cold start, we don't believe in it. But if you look at the facts on the ground, cold start is very much there. They have spent $182 billion on developing cold start from 2004 to 2015. You don't spend that kind of money and then discard the doctrine, because you have made investments in communications, in your weapon systems, in all matter of technologies to support the doctrine. To say that no, they've abandoned it is another lie that is being given to the rest of the world. Now, the cold start doctrine is very dangerous because it's a preemptive doctrine. It suggests that India will do a preemptive strike by land and air in the southern part of Pakistan, grab a piece of territory, and then, as usual, expect that the international community will come in and stop Pakistan from responding. Ain't going to happen. We have developed the Nasr missile, a tactical missile, because previously we used to rely on medium-range missiles. Now nobody in the world thinks Pakistan is that mad that in a limited preemptive strike, Pakistan would strike at the strategic centers of India with a medium-range missile. But when we have the Nasr, a tactical missile, then all bets are off. Because if India marches into Pakistan and that's declaration of all-out war, then we will respond, and we now have the means to do a limited response. Now, whether that would be nuclear or whether that will be conventional is for people to guess and for Pakistan to decide at that moment. But our forces have to be put on alert. We cannot afford, with the BrahMos deployed, to not have our forces placed on alert. So, India is also, of course, if you look at India's deployments on the ground, I'm talking facts of evidence that is there on the ground. India's focus is totally on deployments against Pakistan. Let me give you a few figures. 7 of its 9 commands are configured and deployed against Pakistan. So where is the threat from China? Where are the deployments against China that India talks about? Absolute nonsense. They're obsessed with Pakistan. 81% of the Indian Air Force bases are configured against Pakistan. What used to be their forward bases for wartime have now become regular peacetime bases. So, if 81% of the Indian Air Force bases are configured against Pakistan, what is this nonsense that India talks about a threat from China? They have no threat from China. They're all focused on Pakistan in their deployments. Out of the 7 missile groups that India has raised, all are directed against Pakistan. All are deployed against Pakistan. This is data from open sources, and anybody can go and verify it. And still the world does not want to take note of it. Then I'm afraid when Armageddon comes, it won't be just Pakistan and India or just South Asia. It will go far, far further, because India, as you know, has also developed intercontinental ballistic missiles. Why they need them, I don't know. Maybe they think at some stage they may have a war with the US. Who knows? When you have mad people in power, irrational people in power, then they don't think rationally. Anyhow, India's space militarization is also going full steam ahead. Because what they're trying to do is they want to have space-based integration of their triad of nuclear forces. Triad meaning the air-launched, land-launched, and sea-launched, which would be second strike capability, of course. And if you look at different international reports on India's accumulation of fissile material, thanks to the US 123 agreement, civil nuclear agreement, thanks to Britain, thanks to France, thanks to Australia, even thanks to the Japanese, who keep telling us their anti-nuclear doctrine and then go and sign a civil nuclear deal with India. Thanks to all these countries and their civil nuclear deals with India, India has liberated massive amounts of fissile material which are unsafeguarded from their civil plants, which they can now use to make weapons, because they will be supplied with safeguarded fuel from all these benefactors who have signed this. And mind you, all these countries are parties to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which means they have contravened their obligations under Articles 1 and 2 of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They cannot supply any type of technology or nuclear material to countries who have not signed the NPT. India has not signed the NPT. So, all these countries have violated their own commitments to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And as I said, different international studies have shown that India has amassed enough fissile material to make between 490 to 2,600 nuclear weapons. That's a big amount of nuclear weapons, but nobody talks about it. Maybe it's time for the international community to talk about that. So let me just come back to the preemptive doctrine of cold start. Pakistan has taken the first step of developing, as I said, the Nasr short-range tactical missile. And by the way, it's not a battlefield weapon. There was some crazy American academic who said, mad, bad news from Pakistan. The Pakistanis have gone mad. They've developed this battlefield weapon. They'll use it in their own territory. Again, absolute nonsense. It's a tactical weapon to be used against Indian forces that are marching in a preemptive strike towards Pakistan, to be hit in their own territory. There is nothing battlefield about it. It's a tactical weapon, the Nasr. Let's be clear about that. Now the question then for the world to understand is, if India goes to the next stage of escalation, I've already given you the escalation ladder they have already undertaken, then the question for the world to think about is, who will start the use of nuclear weapons first? And when they're thinking about this, they also better start thinking of doing something to stop Indian designs now, because India is on a roll. Militarily, politically, it is defying all international laws, all international conventions. It has even broken its own, violated its own constitution. So, at a time when India has been held hostage to an ideology of Hindu supremacists, to an ideology of ethnic cleansing and genocide, if the world wants to do another appeasement, as they did in Munich, which eventually led to the Second World War, then be it on their heads the responsibility of what may finally happen. Let me just end by saying that this is a lethal combination of appeasement by the world of Modi's illegal actions and war crimes in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, plus his agenda of ethnic cleansing and genocide. And then these are aggravated by him having his finger on the nuclear button. As he put it earlier this year, our nuclear weapons are not for Diwali. Please remember that statement. This is my last message to the international community. Remember and act before you do another Munich. Thank you very much.
Very clear exposition.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, Excellencies, and I can see number of faces where I had the chance to either serve with them or serve under them. Defense strategists, journals, especially three brothers I can see Kaisar Gandapur, Nawaz Gandapur, and Srim Gandapur. They, I think, not only in the administration, but also in the diplomatic service. And here I see a very respectable our veteran politicians, Madam Abda and Bahram Afsal. I remember I started my career as a civil servant, and I used to see him at that point of time. I'm very happy to see you very healthy and wish you best of health, sir. Well, sir, this is the time that we need to think and think pragmatically. And it's not the time to actually read out statistics. I think we all know, we all read, and we know what exactly has happened. The way Dr. Ijaz has mentioned about RSS and the full details are highly appreciable. But here I would like to tell Dr. Ijaz that it started in 1926. RSS is into being. And if you see, RSS came into a situation even after 1947 to neutralize Nehruism and Gandhism. And you know that they wanted to eliminate Gandhi because they didn't want any kind of a secular situation in their country. And if you see the two brothers from RSS and how he was eliminated, so it is the same mindset and same anti-Pakistan syndrome in the mind of Prime Minister Modi. When he did Pulwama, and within 10 days, I brought a book in under the name of Modi's Doctrine, and whatever is happening, in chronological order, you can read that book, you will find it there. Where this is the actual mindset which India has got, and India would like to inflict us at every point, at every stage. And most of the colleagues, even sitting here, I have been meeting at various levels. Before the election, I was into discussion, and mostly it was said that if Prime Minister Modi comes in power, this situation is going to resolve because he's going to come with 2/3 majority, and he can decide about Kashmir, and he will also decide about good relations with Pakistan, which I differed not only in the meetings, but also in the House and the Parliament. And that's coming true. I have a confirmed conviction that as long as Prime Minister Modi is there, the situation of Pakistan is not going to be good at all. He will continue to hit us, to inflict us. The 5th August notification is not the one-day work. It is actually spread it over for a few years. And it is that point of time when RSS decided to inflict Pakistan on every corner. And you know the way Prime Minister Modi became the butcher of Gujarat. It's not hidden. You know how the candidate against him who was contesting election, how he was killed. So they had the mindset throughout to do something. Your Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you that, as I said, this is not the time to read the statistics. There's a time for action. The question is, what action is required? Now, Modi targeted Pakistan. Modi chose the way. Modi set a proper way forward. What have we done? That's what my question is to the government, to myself, and whole of Pakistan. I'll start with this. If you recall, they brought in immediately the situation after the election. And we should have been alerted at that point of time when there was an agreement between RSS and Modi. And the point number one, that Modi will scrap the Kashmir status. Number two, he will build a temple on Babri Mosque. And third, the way of life. This is the third doctrine. And that's mentioned in my book. By the way, I'm not promoting my book. These two books, its proceed is going to the Shoda Fund. So please do not think perhaps Rahman Malik is promoting his own book. So I am just giving the reference because at that point of time, I am not that good a researcher as Dr. Ijaz is. But whatever I knew as an investigator or a small-time politician, I decided to bring those facts on record so that it becomes a reference book. And I'm glad it is the reference book today. Third thing, which is the way of life. This is what RSS is. And I have given the comparison RSS and Daeshism. In fact, they have brought RSS as a ideology. And this ideology is being mixed with the RSism. And of course, Daeshism. Dr. Jaz mentioned about Serbia. You know how many Muslims were killed and how butcherly they were killed, that you know very well. And there's no doubt the National Security Advisor, Dole, I think nobody will know better than Mr. Dole, than General Durrani. Because having met him, he can see his exact nature. And his exact nature is against Pakistan. And I have also narrated in my second book, Daesh, wherein he goes to Iraq to meet Daesh. There's no love lost between Daesh. It was, in fact, he wanted to bring Daesh in. Because everybody knows where Daesh started. And that origin is not hidden. Many a time we have spoken about it. And of course, the world power is there. And when our Prime Minister went there, and of course, Donald Trump was there, I swear I was not hopeful that we are going to get anything out of it. A head of state has given a commitment to Donald Trump, who's supposed to be the leader of the world. And he backs out, no, I never spoke to Donald Trump about any mediation. So I think हमारे कानून से खड़े हो जाने चाहिए थे. There is something else going on. So while there is a Modi doctrine, there is also Donald Trump doctrine. There is Israel doctrine. And the first meeting when it took place between Israel and India, we should have got alerted. So coming back to the how we have to proceed. Now we have got three options. One is a war. Of course, it's not the option because it leads to destruction. And I think even India will also think 10 times to use nuclear. We are bordering. And I think one, if you're talking about tacticals and others, and I'm sorry, we have been always taken for granted in terms of discrimination. We are talking about NTP, national level, international level. Pakistan has always been ditched. And if you recall, if you call discrimination, we have been also discriminated in nuclear site. Because India was allowed to export, India was allowed to make missiles and all kind of tacticals and other nuclear arms. But we were stopped. Even if we try, there will be sanctions. But India stands immune. See the art of Mr. Modi. I always say a chief terrorist. Forgive me for the language. He's declared top 10 terrorists in the world. And no less than by the American law. And as Dr. Ijaz mentioned Google CEO is Indian. And if you today mention a name of Wani or any freedom fighter in Google, they will cut you. They will ban you. They have even banned one of my official account on my stuff. So they have their actually hands everywhere. And they will continue to have their hands there. So you imagine the same Modi who was declared terrorist, after a few years, he becomes very lovely baby for America, sitting in the lap of President Donald Trump. They forgot about this, that he is a terrorist. But they do issue the sanctions on Pakistan only if one mullawar goes to Malaysia and gets his funds. Just because he's trying to get for his school or for his college or for his madrasa. But here, he is extremist, declared extremist. And it's not me who's saying. There are reports full of, every journal of the world that what he had been doing. So why? So we must see it that at this point of time, if Modi has done it, he has not done in a single day. See the way he moved. In last regime, he was trying against Pakistan everywhere. He actually isolated Pakistan. And we do stand isolated today. I don't have to talk much and discourage my nation by saying so that sorry, we did not do our homework by the successive governments. That's why we are standing alone in the world. So I think it gives us a lesson. At least start it today. When you are fighting against an enemy, you first identify who's the enemy. Then you have to know as to how to actually splash him, how to hit his head. And this is the time that we need to hit Modi politically on his head. And we do have the resources, we do have the law, we do have the material, we do have the evidence. When I say evidence, we must take him to the for trial for the criminal court. He is war criminal. I can prove in next 2 minutes that he's a war criminal. Very rightly said by Minister Shari Mazari that number of other things are there. You know, there is Rome Convention. And in Rome Convention, there are 5 ingredients, parameters, somebody to be declared as a war criminal. Exactly like the same, which you mentioned about Soviet General. What Prime Minister has done, he has posted 1 million troops in Kashmir with the intention for the ethnic cleansing, demographic changes, and even before this order, this notification, we would talk about 35 and 370. In fact, they had started defense village program, and they started moving the Muslims out of the bordering area. It had already started. In fact, they were just trying to build out some legal course for it. So if they can kill 94,000 Kashmiris who are just demanding nothing but self-determination, and that too under the international order by the United Nations. I think this was the responsibility of the United Nations to have the self-determination date announced and have it done. And I'm sorry to say, unfortunately, we have been following the given line of India. If today we are feeling weak, I must say that we did not react with aggressive action and the action which was required to be done. And even today, I request to the government, have they moved to the United Nations with specific request that this particular resolution through which self-determination was to be actually implemented, why it has not been implemented? If some other country does it, there are sanctions. You see the sanction on Iran on certain issues. I don't want to count many countries in the world, but why there is no sanction on India? We keep looking towards the world. Perhaps they will come exactly the same way when East Pakistan was going out of hand and we were waiting for the 7th Fleet. Please don't wait for anybody. Use your sense, use your powers, and use your legal right. And the legal right is the Rome Convention. I know some of us have got certain views that the Rome Convention has not been ratified Pakistan, therefore we can't go. No, I beg to differ. Because the ingredients given are 5, even intention to kill, if there is a killing, a mass killing, mass graving, and you have seen how the pelleting has been done, how mass rapes have been done, and it's not me who's saying. The Human Rights Commission on the 14th June 2018 has categorically stated as to what was done by Indian forces and by other authorities under the direction of no less than Prime Minister Modi. He's same Prime Minister Modi is anti-Pakistan, who was teenager and went to East Pakistan along with Mukti Bani. So how can we forget this? I know a warning is coming, so I will be finishing in 2 minutes, sir. So I would like that these points which I mentioned, only Kashmiri leaders can go. Okay, if the government of Pakistan says that we have not ratified this, we cannot go, but nobody can actually stop the Kashmiris because they are the direct affectees. They have become the orphans. They have lost their children. They have lost their father. They have lost their mothers. So you have all the details. And we have got the living evidence, living witnesses. They should be enough to take him for trial. And I earnestly request for this forum, and also I request to the chairman of the committee to please write a letter to the government to immediately proceed under Rome Convention. And by the way, I wrote a letter to the High Commissioner of International Human Rights Commission. Of course, I've given copy to the Minister also. What we need is that we have to tell them to appoint a new High Commissioners a committee who should go to India. And you know, when I mentioned about Chidambaram, that he's been arrested just because he mentioned 370 and 35A. And you know what they have been doing on Twitter? How many abuses I've heard, I've never heard in my life, the way they became active, Raw and everybody. But I'm glad, and I gave him warning right from here to Prime Minister Modi, I'm not going to leave you, I'll follow you to your grave. Because you are doing everything bad, not only to Pakistan, but the entire Muslim community in India and Kashmir. And if you think that you can reduce the population of Muslim to the minority, you're sadly mistaken. We all stand for it. Every Pakistani, every child here, every elder here is with Kashmiris and will continue to be with Kashmiris till they get their freedom. And I assure you, a time will come that Kashmir will get freedom. Will get freedom because what they are suffering today, I think UNO is sleeping, the international community is sleeping, with apologies from the ambassadors here. If this thing is happening in West, will West remain quiet? 2 people die, and it looks that the whole world is just blurring. Now, every day, so many Muslims are killed. Nobody bothers. Because you think that the voice of Kashmiri is weaker? Nothing is weaker before the place of Allah. It's going to be heard sooner or later. But I think if the West is having its own geopolitical benefits, so they are not going to work. I know the bloc, we're talking of nuclear. If West is thinking to make South Asia as a platform for the third world, they are mistaken. If something happens to this region, the whole world is going to come under fire. Therefore, don't forget that if you have a Cold War with China, don't drag Pakistan in it. If you have Cold War with any other country, with Russia, don't mention every time Pakistan. I think every time anything happens, our trouble is for Pakistan. And last message to Mr. President Donald Trump. If you are coming for mediation, there is no mediation called remote mediation. The mediation is mediation. Come forward. Sit together if you're really happy to it. But I know it's not going to happen because until and unless Afghanistan issue is not settled with Afghan Taliban, Pakistan will continue to suffer. And I've seen it whenever there is trouble between Pakistan and America. And if America wants something from Pakistan, all eastern borders, they become hot. They are firing. And I hope that we even understand, everybody sitting here, Mr. Chairman, I know we've been talking a lot about it, but I think this is the time that we all have to be united like we are sitting here. With one voice, we are with Kashmiris and will continue to fight against Kashmiris. And anybody tries to inflict Pakistan will give her our lives. Thank you very much. God bless Pakistan. Thank you. Khuda Hafiz.
सिचुएशन ऐसी थी, लेकिन जिस तरह से हैंडल की जा रही थी, आजकल पिछले 20-22 साल से क्या हो रहा है हमें खुद अंदाज़ा नहीं है। लेकिन इस वक्त क्या हो रहा है, नंबर 1, खवातीन जो सी सेक्शन के लिए हॉस्टल्स में बुक थी, जिनको डॉक्टर ने डेट्स दी थी, उनके बारे में किसी को नहीं मालूम हुआ कि उनके साथ क्या हुआ है। इंडिया ने जेनोसाइड के लिए, आप लोग बार बार रिपीट करते हैं जेनोसाइड के 2 तरीके हैं, या उनको भूख से मारो या गर्म में बीमार जो है उनको वहाँ दवाई के बगैर मारो। न दवाएं हैं, आपने राहुल गांधी की कल वीडियो देखी थी, किस तरह से वो दवाइयों के लिए खातून श्रीनगर से दिल्ली जा रही थी, लेकिन हर एक बंदा वहाँ मुंह नहीं कर सकता है। हमारे 10,000 बच्चे 12 से 18 साल के उन्होंने उठा लिए और श्रीनगर से शिफ्ट किए गए हैं दिल्ली, उनको दिल्ली से आगरा और बहुत सारे जेलों में भेजा जा रहा है। आप सबों के लिए ये सवालिया है, इस दौरान जब इनकी FIR दर्ज नहीं हुई है, इस दौरान दौरान क्या हो जाएगा उन बच्चों के साथ, उनको किस तरह से इस्तेमाल किया जाएगा, या वो मिसिंग होंगे या उनको टॉर्चर किया जाएगा या पुलवामा जैसे अटैक के लिए उनको इस्तेमाल किया जाएगा। प्लीज़ मेहरबानी करके आप एक नेशन की तरह हमारे साथ खड़े हो जाए। हम इस वक्त बहुत मुश्किल में हैं, बहुत तकलीफ़ में हैं, और इस वक्त जो सबसे ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है वो बच्चों की दवाइयाँ और उनका के लिए फूड है, मिल्क है। हमारे पास वहाँ जो खबरें आ रही हैं आगे पीछे से इंटरनेशनल मीडिया के ज़रिए, वो चीज़ें इस वक्त वहाँ बहुत ज़रूरत है। यहाँ जो इंटरनेशनल कम्युनिटी बैठी है, मेरी आपसे दरख्वास्त है कि इनको अप्रोच करके इनको सामने लाए कि कुछ लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल की तरफ आप जाए, मेडिसिन लेके जाए, ड्राई फ्रूट लेके जाए, और कम से कम एक रास्ता बनाए कश्मीर तक पहुंचने के लिए। हमें इस वक्त ये इंतज़ार नहीं करना है कि जब कर्फ्यू हटेगा तो क्या होगा। प्लीज़ ये देखिए कि अभी हम क्या कर सकते हैं। आप ज़्यादा किलिंग्स का इंतज़ार न कीजिए, क्योंकि भारत की जो प्लानिंग है वो बहुत ही ज़्यादा सख्त है। जैसे वो बबा के दहल कहते हैं, जैसे हरियाणा के वहाँ के चीफ मिनिस्टर ने ख़वातीन के बारे में ज़िल्लत आमेज़ अल्फाज इस्तेमाल किए। मुझे लगता है कि पाकिस्तानी कौम कश्मीर इसको बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकती। 3 सजेशंस हैं। आप लोग यूनाइटेड नेशन में जा रहे हैं, एक फैक्ट फाइंडिंग मिशन वहाँ भेजें। मेहरबानी करके यहाँ पर फॉरेन जो हमारे मिनिस्टर हैं वो OIC की एक फॉरेन मिनिस्टर्स मीटिंग या इमीडिएटली कॉल करें, उनका एक फैक्ट फाइंडिंग मिशन जाए, और जहाँ पार्लियामेंटेरियंस बैठे हैं वो अपना मिशन लेके वहाँ कम से कम इजाज़त ले इंडिया को। जो डिप्लोमेटिक आपकी एग्रेसिव डिप्लोमेसी है, ये 3 चीज़ें इस वक्त बहुत ज़रूरी है। हम नहीं चाहते कि जंग हो, लेकिन हम पर मुसल्लत की गई है और हम इसको फेस कर रहे हैं। इस वक्त मेहरबानी करके 3 चीज़ें जो इंडिया इस वक्त कर रहा है कि अगर उन्होंने इंसानों का कत्लेआम किया है, साथ साथ वो मईशी कत्ल भी कर रहा है। हमारी इस वक्त फ्रूट इंडस्ट्री जो है वो सारी तबाह हो चुकी है। वो माल जो है वो वहाँ पर गल रहा है। तो ये मईशी कत्ल आपने देखा होगा, जब किसी कौम को ज़ेर करना हो तो वो इसके लिए तैयारी कर रहा है। हिंदुस्तान के अज़ाइम आप सबों के सामने, आपने RSS के डॉक्ट्रिन को भी देखा है, आपने यहाँ की इंडिया की डिप्लोमेसी भी देखी है, आपने सब कुछ। यहाँ बड़े बड़े लोग बैठे हैं जो हमें भी कुछ सुनाते हैं, सुनते भी हैं, लेकिन कोई प्रोएक्टिव चीज़ हमें नज़र नहीं आती है। मेहरबानी कीजिएगा। इस वक्त सबसे ज़्यादा तकलीफ जो है, न एम्बुलेंसेस है, न मेडिसिन है, न डॉक्टर्स हॉस्पिटल्स में है, न मूवमेंट की दी जाती है। एक बंदा जो बच्चों की दूध लेने के लिए बाहर निकलता है, उनको वो बिरहना करके उनके कपड़े उतार के उनको सड़कों पर रखा जाता है, और फिर वो घर को नहीं जाते रात तक। ये पनिशमेंट है। और अगर आप देखेंगे UN के जो 10 टॉप रेपेटर्स है, उन्होंने कहा है कि ये जो सिस्टमेटिक पनिशमेंट दी जा रही है कश्मीरियों को, इससे दुनिया की आंखें खुलनी चाहिए। लेकिन अगर आप लोग एक कलेक्टिव मेजरमेंट इसकी करेंगे तो आपको अंदाज़ा हो जाएगा कि भारत के अज़ाइम इससे भी बहुत आगे हैं। कश्मीर उनके पास एक वेपन है जो इस्तेमाल कर रहा है, लेकिन हमने 30 साल हिंदुस्तान को बर्दाश्त किया, हमने 30 साल हिंदुस्तान को रोका है। अब आपकी जिम्मेदारी है। हमारी जिम्मेदारी मेरे ख्याल में पूरी हो गई है। वहाँ बच्चे ख़वातीन जब भी मौका मिलता है सड़कों पर आ रहे हैं। और आपके लिए जो प्रोग्राम ऑफ एक्शन हमारे कायद हुर्रियत सैयद अली शाह गिलानी साहब की तरफ से आया है, वो आप सबों के लिए एक पैगाम है कि अगर हम आज नहीं उठेंगे तो हम कल खड़े नहीं हो सकते हैं। वाक़िअ दावत अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह।
सैयद फैज़ नक्शबंदी साहब कुल जमाती हुर्रियत कॉन्फ्रेंस के जो नुमाइंदे हैं पाकिस्तान में,